Welcome, everybody. Thank you again for joining us. I'm really excited, as always, to introduce our guest to you today. But before I do, there are some folks that I'd like to say thank you to that we always thank. We'd like to thank brassandwinds.com. Brass and Winds are our go-to company whenever we need brass or woodwind instruments. They've been very supportive to us through the years, and we appreciate them. Check them out at brassandwinds.com. If you're looking for a better way to learn blues and jazz or just to learn the piano, check us out at truermu.com. It's a better way to learn piano. There's online courses for you, even if you know nothing about the instrument at all. And if you want to study with a person, you can come visit us at Willow School, Georgia. That's willowschoolga.com, and we can help you out with almost any instrument or any style you're looking to do. Now, when I originally came up with the idea of doing these interviews, Mr. Joe Gransden was one of the first people I wanted to interview, but I didn't feel like I was ready. I wanted to get a bunch of these under my belt before I took him on, but I'm really pleased to present him today. Before we introduce him, I'm going to tell you a little about him. He is a trumpet player and a big band leader in Atlanta, Georgia. He has worked as a sideman with people like Barry White, the Moody Blues, and Aretha Franklin. He has had his album Close to My Heart produced by Kenny G, and Kenny G guests on his most recent album, Go Getta. He runs a 16-piece big band in Atlanta that is one of the finest musical outfits I've ever heard. And I couldn't be more pleased to introduce to you Mr. Joe Gransden. Joe, welcome.
Thank you, man. Good to be here with you, Adam.
It's our pleasure to have you. I'm really excited. So I talked a little bit about your history, but I would rather hear from you what your history is. How did you get here?
You mean to Atlanta?
Actually, I mean, for one thing, I know you grew up in New York City. So what would possess you to leave there and come here?
That's kind of an interesting story. I was born in New York City, just north of New York City in Yonkers, and spent my earliest years up there. But then my father was transferred to Buffalo, New York. So I grew up really in Buffalo, and middle school and high school, and a little bit of college was all Buffalo before moving to New York and all that. But that was kind of my early years and where it all got started. And then I took a tour with the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra, and I left for about a year. I was on the road every day on the bus in a different part of the country, and we also went to Europe and South America.
How
And
old were
while we
you?
were in South America, oh, I was 20.
Okay.
I was 20 years old. I'd done 2 years of college at Fredonia State College outside of Buffalo, and I got the call to join the band, and I quit college and jumped on the road. But
Yeah.
while I was out there, my father was transferred from Buffalo to Atlanta.
Oh,
So when I quit the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra after about a year, I just had enough of the road for a minute. At least that style of being on the road. Um, wasn't really ready to go home and be on my own in Buffalo. So I transferred my credits to Georgia State University. I met Dr. Gordon Vernick, and I moved in with my parents in Roswell and finished school at Georgia State. And then immediately after my jury, the next day, I packed up and drove to Manhattan and lived in New York for quite a long time before I came back here full time after 9/11. And
yeah.
after I kind of settled here. I had been back and forth a few times prior to that, but I came back and got married to my wife Charissa, and we kind of settled here in Atlanta and started my big band. I started my group and my little LLC booking company, and it's just been year after year since then. It's been great.
Yeah. Well, was 9/11 the impetus for the move for you?
Yeah, it was interesting. I was living in Brooklyn, and on a Monday night, 9/11 was on Tuesday. On Monday night, I flew here to Atlanta to visit my parents and the girl I was dating, who's now my wife, Charissa. And she picked me up at the airport late at night, probably 11 o'clock at night, and we went out for a late dinner. And then we crashed and woke up the next morning, and 9/11 had happened. And I couldn't get back to Brooklyn, to where I lived for, I guess, a week, maybe 2 weeks. They had kind of grounded all the airlines. When I finally got back to Brooklyn, it was just horrible. It was just a terrible, obviously, thing that happened, and very depressing. And I was there for about a week, and I got a call from Pano from the Buckhead Life Group, who owns Vinny Vidi Vici and Preachy and the Buckhead Diner and all these wonderful restaurants. And he said, I have a private club right off of the Chops restaurant, and we do music 5 nights a week, and we'd like you to play there. I said, well, I don't live in Atlanta anymore. Oh, I didn't know you moved. Yeah, I live in Brooklyn. He said, well, if you ever want to come back. I said, all right, I appreciate that. And I hung up and I called my girlfriend and my parents. And in New York, at that point, there was no gigs. So I just packed up and left and came back to Atlanta and started that gig and did that for 4 or 5 years, every single night of the week, man. And that was kind of what got me here. Then I got married and you know, the Atlanta music scene really started to pop and was really kind to me and kept me very busy. And there was really no reason to leave. And this is just such a great town, and the scene was so strong and is so strong, and I love it here.
Well, can you talk a little bit? Obviously, New York has had its ups and downs, as has Atlanta. I know that in the '50s, Atlanta was a really hopping music town, and then in the '80s, it kind of petered out for a little while, and it has come back very strong. When you first got back here to live, what was your take on the scene, and where did you think it could go?
Well, when I first got back here to live full time after 9/11, I was coming from Manhattan, and I was coming from jam sessions every night of the week, someplace in New York City, and plenty of gigs and club dates and Broadway shows and all kinds of playing opportunities that I was lucky enough to have. I got to Atlanta, and right away I had this 5 night a week steady that I just mentioned with some great musicians, and it was like all of a sudden I was a band leader. In New York, I was a sideman. When I got here, all of a sudden I was a band leader, and I had these two guys that I could call these songs. I could learn all these new songs. I could make leader money, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do.
Uh, so I started feeling like maybe there's something to this. You know, I had led some groups in New York, but my career and the money that I was making was all as a sideman. So I dove into that kind of head first, and I thought, what could I do here in Atlanta to really provide me the income that I need to not leave and provide me the musical, you know, like diet that I'm going to need to keep my soul happy.
Yeah.
So I started booking all these little restaurant gigs with my trio. And at one point, after I had stopped playing at the Chops gig, I had I had 8 gigs a week. I had every night and a Sunday brunch with my trio, Neil Starkey and Bill Anshell at the time. And eventually Kevin Bale started playing with us and Kenny Banks and all the wonderful people that you know. And that's kind of what solidified it for me that this town is really strong in the sense that the people support music. I mean, they weren't all concerts. A lot of times we were playing background music, but we were playing what we wanted to play. We were playing the Great American Songbook. We were playing the you know, the Thelonious Monk and Miles Davis tunes and Benny Golson tunes and just doing our thing. And then slowly I worked my way into Churchill grounds and picked up a night there. And that's where I met all of the great musicians that this town has offered, because that was our spot for years. In fact, I probably really learned how to play there, you know. And then from that point on, it was just pretty obvious that true, it's not New York City. We don't have 10,000 monster musicians on every instrument, you know, and I'm exaggerating, of course, but in Atlanta, there are so many talented jazz musicians, and you could put them in different combinations, and you could try different styles of jazz and smooth jazz, a little bit of R&B, straight ahead jazz, and it just kind of became home, and I had no desire to leave or do anything else. I mean, anytime you can work 5, 6, 7 nights a week and make pretty good money as a trumpet player. And I was singing too at the time. I mean, I was singing a lot, and that I think that might have helped me get some work. But anytime you can do that, I mean, why leave? Where else would you go? You know?
Right. There's a big difference between being a sideman and being a leader. It's quite a shift in a lot of ways. Did you find that it appealed to you, or did you feel like it was a challenge for a little while?
It was a challenge at the beginning because I was very young, and my father always told me to surround myself with the greatest musicians. And so I would get seasoned veterans like Neil Starkey and Bill Anshell, for that matter, and they were older than me. And so I was a leader, but yet I had to lead guys that had been doing what I'm trying to do now, 20 and 30 years longer than I had been doing it. So there was a little bit of a struggle with me becoming kind of of I don't know, influential figure. You know, a lot of times I would say something, you know, hey guys, it's slowing down, and they would look at me like, dude, it's not slowing down. So, hey, guys, can we take this song up a half step? They're like, yeah, you know, like I I don't know. I was pretty green, But then I started getting used to it, and they were very patient with me, and I
Yeah.
think I became a pretty good leader. I mean, I really try to treat everybody fair. I try to get everybody taken care of by the venue, the client. Um, when it started getting a little bit more tricky to be a leader was when I started my big band, because now instead of a piano, bass, and drums, or piano and bass, now I had 16 musicians that I had to make sure were a certain place on time. I had to send them all the details. I had to book them. Guys were subbing out because somebody was sick, or the bookkeeping of it became brutal. And then by the time, and then you got on the bandstand, and you're trying to conduct, you're trying to sing, you're trying to entertain a crowd, and you're trying to play trumpet. So I took on all those roles. Plus, I did all the paperwork. I did all the contracting, all the 1099s. I wanted to learn everything about this business.
Mm.
And I did. I mean, I can do a whole lecture on music business. I could quit playing, and I could start a booking agency. I know how to do all that. I could play, I could sing, I could. The only thing I don't really do is write arrangements. I left that to the cats that really do that, the Wes Funderburks and Jeff Jarvis and those kind of people. But that's kind of my story, man. That's it. And by the way, I just turned 50 the other day. It went quick, man. Since I got,
Well,
I can't.
you're probably just halfway done, we're hoping, right?
I hope so.
So you switched to the big band. Your big band is huge. It's very well known in the city, and it's very unusual for a big band these days to succeed. And your big band is succeeding. It has succeeded. And I'd like to, first of all, you mentioned that you wanted to do this not just for musical reasons, but because you wanted to dive into the learning experience. Are you that kind of a person where you just, if you don't know it, you got to know it?
Only if I love it.
Mhm.
Only if I love it. I'm the same way with golf. I love I love that game, and I'm not very good at it, but I play a lot, and I really try to dive into that and figure out the little intricacies of the sport. And it's the same way with music. If I'm not into it, man, I can't go there. I can't. I get very lazy. But with music, yeah, I'm 100% in. In fact, when I was a kid and I first fell in love with the trumpet, you couldn't get me off the thing. I would play 8, 9 hours a day. I would skip school. Everything else went away. Like my grades weren't great. It was like a drug for me, And learning the business of music and learning how to sing in front of an audience and learning how to talk to a crowd. All of that became a welcomes challenge. And I would go see Harry Connick Jr. perform, or I would go see Tony Bennett, or I would watch old Sinatra tapes, or I would go see Wynton perform, and I would see how they would interact with the crowd, and how they would uh, book the set. When do they do a ballad? When do they do an up tempo song? And I paid a lot of attention to that. We used to go see these concerts, and I would say to my wife, if the concert started at 8, but maybe things got started late, I would say, all right, it's 8:12. They just started. Let's see how long this set is. And then I would see, well, it was 90 minutes right on the dot, man. They had it down to the. So I really wanted to learn that side of the business. And
When
I
you,
think, I mean, I think I did.
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, no, I'm done. Go ahead.
When you get good at something, do you get tired of it and move on? It seems to me you haven't gotten tired of any of this, that you continue to find ways to challenge yourself. Jazz is great for that, by the way, because you never feel like you've mastered it. But do you do you discard stuff when you feel like you've gotten good enough, or do you manage to keep on learning in it?
No, I don't get tired of it, and I am trying to continue to learn. It's such a well-rounded thing that I'm doing now that there's always a challenge. Like one night, I might be playing straight ahead with a rhythm section, and I'm not singing at all. I'm not entertaining, and I'm just trying to create music and improvise. And then the next night, maybe I'm doing Sinatra type songs with my big band and trying to make the crowd laugh a little bit. So there's always those challenges. I will admit that um, before COVID came along, I was super lucky, and I was playing 350 gigs a year. I mean, I was working all the time, and I was getting a little bit burned out, and I was starting to, it was my fault because I could say no. You could say no to gigs, you don't have to take them all, but I was just taking everything, saving money, investing money, learning what I could. And then kind of COVID hit, and everything went away instantly. And it wasn't long after that. We had 2 or 3 weeks probably where most of us had a chance to breathe again. But then after that point, I was like, how could I ever complain about going out and performing in front of a crowd and getting paid for it? Boy, I wish I had that back now. So it
Yeah.
wasn't really I was tired of it. It was just I did get a little burned out.
It is hard to say no to gigs because sometimes when you start saying no, they stop calling.
They stop calling, and you don't know the next month if you know.
Right.
You just that's the music business side of things too. That I think that the youngsters should learn. I mean, if you make $100 on a gig, or you make $500 on a gig, a portion of that money should go in the bank. I mean, you should save some of that and invest some of that. I've been saving money since I was 22, since I first lived in New York the first time, and I just whatever I made, some of it was put away. Like I didn't even make it.
Yeah,
And
right.
that they don't always teach you all that in music school. Some places do, but that's an important side of things because first of all, unless you're Winton or Harry or Roy Hargrove, none of us are making big money on gigs, right? Not like a basketball player would make or a professional golfer would make, even though we may have put just as much time growing up into our craft as they have. So the money that we make is a lot smaller. So you have to save it. You don't want to be 60, 70, 80 years old with nothing in the bank, nothing to show for all the years and all the gigs that you played. So that was one of the reasons why I took everything. I mean, not everything, but I worked every night, and sometimes with the big band, sometimes with the small group, and I saved and saved and saved and saved.
There's one particular challenge I'd like to bring up. Now, I was fortunate enough, you made an album called It's a Beautiful Thing, which was your first big band recording. And I was there the first night you did that. Your original idea, if I remember correctly, was I'm going to record this big band on one night, bam, and then I'm going to put an album out. That's not exactly how it happened, is it? Tell us the story.
Well, that was my second big band record. My first was a
Huh?
Christmas project
Oh,
that I
okay.
did, but I wanted to do a live record in the style of Frank Sinatra with Basie at the Sands in Vegas. And when I say in the style of it, I wanted to hear the people's glasses clinking, and I wanted to hear the plates, and I wanted to hear the talking here and there. So I got Ken Gregory from 800 East Studios to help out with this, and Johnny Scatina from Cafe 290 had just started his record label, Cafe 290 Records. And I thought, man, well, let's do it at Cafe 290. Let's get Ken to mic up the band, but not just the band. He had mics all over the room, way back by the audience, way in the back. Everywhere you look, there was microphones picking up everything. Now, I don't know how they mic'd it when they did Sinatra's record at the Sands. I don't know. But I just told Ken, I want everything. And then if we have to mix it a little bit and we have to pull down something or raise something up, that's fine. But let's capture everything. And the goal was to do it one night. We ended up doing 2 nights and putting some of it together. The post-production on that record took longer than we thought. It's pretty difficult to just press record and play for 90 minutes and then have that be the show. I mean, for instance, there might be a little bit of dead time in between one song and the next if somebody's not quite ready in the band or somebody's piece of music falls off this. So there was a lot of that. And when there's so many microphones and so many things going together, just making that into a show took a lot of time. But that project to me is fantastic. And I don't mean anything that I necessarily did musically on it. I just mean the band is killing, and the energy from the crowd clapping and the plates clanking and the cash register going. It's just if you listen to it on vinyl, we pressed it on vinyl too. If you listen to it on a good vinyl system and you sit back and turn the lights off and close your eyes, you feel like you're there. You
Yeah,
know, it's a little different with the CDs with the compression and all that, but
right.
it's just breathed, man. It's really cool. So we basically captured what I was hoping to.
But it took more than a couple of nights.
It took 2 nights of recording the band, but
Right.
it took tons of time with me and Ken in the studio afterwards, putting everything together and deciding which song was right and which song wasn't. And then there were little things like that you really want to take the time to do, like the trombone player's bell hits the microphone and it makes a big loud noise. That stuff happens in live recordings, but we did our best to mask as much as we could any mistakes and any problems that would take away from the kind of the music side of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I look at what you've got going, if I go to your website, joegransden.com, what I see is a whole jazz world happening. You've got you as a solo performer, you got your big band, and you have you as an actor too. And my perspective is that you've created this whole jazz world It's pretty interesting. And you've created a jazz world that really doesn't exist in a whole lot of places when you consider the big band and including your acting work. Uh, so it's really amazing to visit your world and to get in there and see it. But there is a danger too, which is that this world already exists in the past. And so the question becomes, why would I want to go see you if I can just check out the masters back there? How do you, is your desire to be tapping into nostalgia and to that past world? Or are you trying to create something new with what you're doing?
Um, I'm not, I'm trying to create a sound that's mine. So that in that sense, it is new, but I'm not one of those musicians who's trying to push jazz in another direction, or uh, I don't compose lots and lots and lots of music. I write a little bit, but I am more of an entertainer, I think now, and I think that the style of music I love, and you mentioned it a minute ago, the nostalgia of that music is there's still an audience for it. And I do love it. I mean, I'm not trying to sound like I was around in the 1940s with the vibrato on the trumpet and all that. I'm trying to sound like a modern trumpet player, and I'm trying to sound like a singer that's a throwback to back in the days, but with a modern style, you know. But no, I wouldn't say that anything that I'm doing really is new and hasn't really been done before. I mean, when you think about it, our the improvising we do as musicians, as jazz musicians, I mean, our job basically is to study and learn everything we can from the guys that came before us, especially the masters, and to learn that language, because that's really what they're doing is speaking the language. It's like trying to learn German or Italian or Spanish, right? You got to learn that language. A lot of musicians don't go back and learn the language. They might learn some licks, they might learn all their scales and all their chords, but they can't speak the language. They don't know the inflections. They don't even listen to some of them to the old days. So in that respect, we're doing everything we can just to sound as good as they did back then, and we still can't even do that, right? I mean, when you think about it, we still buy Miles Davis records, and I say records, but you know what I mean, tracks, MP3s, whatever we do. We still listen to Miles and Bird and Dexter Gordon and Coltrane and Fats Navarro and Louis Armstrong, all the wonderful artists that are out today. We don't necessarily buy all their music, right? It takes nothing away from them, but we still love those old guys. And a couple of musicians told me one time, and I believe it, that back in the day, I think they spent a little bit more time playing melodies than we kind of do now, right? Um, Chet Baker, any of those guys, man, they were just very melodic players. And I do fashion myself as somebody that's somewhat melodic. I really hear what I want to play before I play it. I have a lot of language in my fingers just from transcribing and listening to the music, but I really want something to sing when I play it. So, I mean, that's the long answer of saying no. I'm not out there to change the sound of this art form.
Yeah. Well, to speak to that point, I have to say that like I'm listening to your album Dichotomy, which you did with Kenny Banks, the two of you as a duet. And what I really loved about it was that despite the fact I've heard you play and, you've got, licks out the wazoo. You could, play as well as anyone I've ever heard. And yet on this album, you're not showing off at all. There's no showiness about you one bit. It's very much just singing through the trumpet. And it's really wonderful. It takes all the. There's a lot of times when you listen to jazz and you feel like you're just listening to someone tell you how great they are. There's none of that in this record. It's simply this is music, and I happen to be playing the trumpet.
That's good. I'm glad you said that, because that record was inspired by Chet Baker's record Diane, which is just Chet and Paul Bly, or is it Blay or Bly?
Paul Blay, I believe.
Play on piano, and it's the same kind of thing. It's just it's just music, right? You're not trying to show off. And with Kenny and I, we've been so tight for so many years, and we played thousands of gigs together. He knows what I'm going to play right before I play it, and I know everything he's going to play right before he plays it. Sometimes he'll play something, and I'll say to myself, I knew he was going to play that, and he'll do the same thing. So when we got to that record, and we did that recording session, we made a deal. We said basically, if I play anything that Kenny's heard me play before, or if Kenny plays anything that I've heard him play before, every time that happens, you owe the other guy $5. And what that does, and so now we do that on gigs. When we play concerts, we do it now. We don't play, if we're playing a little background restaurant gig, we don't do it. But we'll be at the Jazz Corner this weekend, and we'll do that again. What that does to you is right before you're about to play something that you know is going to work, and it's a pre-programmed lick that you worked out, and or it's just a phrase that you know is coming, you think about that $5 and you instantly change directions and go in another direction, and it really opens up all kinds of improvisational creative juices, right? And we did the same thing with that record, in the sense of melody. Like before we started every song, we just told each other, look, let's just make some music. You know, there's no reason to try and show off. I can't sound like, I can't play like, Wynton's not gonna be impressed if I try to play some fast lick, right? Who am I trying to impress? And same thing with Kenny. He's like, I'm not Art Tatum, but Kenny knows that he is very spiritual, and his musicianship is such that he can play the piano and really move somebody. And that was the whole impetus behind that record. And I think it came nice. In fact, people have been asking if we're going to do another one, and we've talked about doing one more. And this one we're going to do to all analog tape.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's another side to you which I greatly appreciate, and I want to shout out for. You have led a number of jazz sessions in the city, and I have had some good experiences at jam sessions and some really, really terrible experiences. And as a very young player, it was very hard for me even to progress because of some of the experiences I had at jam sessions. So I was very happy anytime I found one that was well run. And every time I've ever gone to a session that you're running, it's just really wonderful. Doesn't seem to matter what anybody's skill level is. You're welcoming the musicians. You're taking care of the audience. You're taking care of everybody. And is there something about that taking care of people that also translates into the music? You say we've lost something. Was there a sense perhaps maybe 50, 60 years ago of a greater sense of taking care of people through music that you picked up on?
I don't know. I don't know if that happened back in the day. I know that way back the jam sessions were pretty serious cutting sessions, and but not in a. I mean, basically, the musicians were all on the road, right? Back in the day, they were all working. This was the music, the most popular music in the country, right? So when they all got together in a different city, they were happy to see each other. You know, Lester Young and Coleman Hawkins, you know, and they would get in these clubs and they would jam, and it would be a jam session. And sure, they wanted to cut each other, but only because it'd be like playing basketball. Sure, you want to beat the guy, but it's a friendly game. Or playing golf, you want to make that putt. But what it's turned into, if you're not careful at some sessions, is I'm better than you vibe, and you're not good enough to be on stage with me, you know. And my way of running a jam session all started because when I was in New York City, I would go to jam sessions and I would see how horrible sometimes some jam sessions were run with respect to younger musicians that maybe don't have quite the chops as the older musicians. Until I met Joe Magnarelli at Smalls. And Joe Magnarelli, who's a wonderful, wonderful trumpet player, he would give me a chance and he would let me play, and I'd watch how he would treat people. And he wasn't really running a jam session. He had a gig there, but he would open up, I think, the second set maybe. And clearly there were nights when he would let me play where I should not have been up there with regards to the level of playing. One time I was up there and Richie Vitale and Roy Hargrove and Joe, they were all playing and I was playing along with them, and I was 20 years old. I didn't know what I was doing. But Joe never gave me a hard time. He said, look, just come to these jam sessions, write down every song on a napkin that you don't know, and don't come back next week unless you know that song, right? So I would do that. And then I never saw him vibe anybody. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. So when I got to Atlanta and this restaurant, Twain's in Decatur, which is where I live, asked me if I would come and play a gig there once a week. I said, why don't we just do a jam session? Because I don't really want to come here every week. This is where I live and I got to see all these, you know, let's just do an open mic jam session. And so I told myself, this is going to be a nice one. This is going to be a fun one. Yes, we're going to have monster musicians come in here. And I'm going to try and do my best to put, you know, the heavyweights with the heavyweights so they feel comfortable. It doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes there's 60 musicians that want to play, you know, and people would sometimes give me a hard time. Hey man, why don't you put me up there with that piano player? Why do I got to play with him? I would just say, you know, bro, don't come to this session if that's how you're going to be, right? First of all, that guy's a young guy. He probably looks up to you, you know, go up and play with him, right? What's the big deal? I mean, it should be a learning experience. It should be fun and true. The the heavyweights, whether they're local guys or guys or gals that have come in to play a show in Atlanta from New York, wherever they are, and they happen to come by our jam session, they deserve a chance to shine too. And the musicians that are younger, that don't quite have that yet, they shouldn't feel bad, but they should sit and listen and learn. A lot of times, the biggest culprits are the younger, more inexperienced musicians. You would think it would be the mean old guys that just want to get up there. Sometimes these young cats would just get up or vibe the older guys and just get up and start playing. And I'm going to say, just sit down and listen, man. I'll get you up on the next tune. Just sit down and listen. So I really wanted to make everybody feel good and everybody feel welcome. Um, first of all, because it helps the music and it helps the scene. Secondly, it keeps people coming. I mean, I had to fill a room, and we did for 7 or 8 years, and then we did the same thing at Bankman's until COVID happened. We could fill those rooms. You could do a gig at one of these venues, and 15, 20, 30 people would show up. You do a nice jam session, you might get 100 people paying the cover charge, buying drinks, buying food, supporting the club. Um, Something that happened at Twain's and Bankman's, both musicians met other musicians that would never meet and formed bands and got to know each other. And this guy used the other guy on a recording session, or this girl sang with this group now. So it was like a networking kind of event too. So there was just I know I'm getting long-winded, but there was no room for any vibes. And we'll fire it back up too once we get out of this stuff we're into. And if there's negative vibes, they gotta go to another session.
You're also a family man. You talked about the fact that you're married, you have children. The music business can be really hard on relationships. You seem to have avoided that pitfall. One reason is because you've created a world in Atlanta, so you don't have to be in other countries all the time. But how have you managed the family versus the career thing so well?
Just a lot of girlfriends.
You know we're
I'm
recording this, right? You do know that, right?
kidding. I'm kidding. I have an amazing wife, Sharissa, and she is a incredible flute player. And so she knows the music business, and she's also an amazing educator. She teaches at the Lovett School. She runs the band program there with a couple other friends of mine, wonderful educators. And we've been together forever. And we started dating at Georgia State, 1993 or something. So she knew my love for music and what I was going to do the rest of my life when I met her, and she had no problem with that. And she could have chose that same path if she decided not to be an educator and teach during the day. She'd be playing with some major symphony somewhere. So with that respect, there's no issue at all. There's never you're going to have to play again tonight. I never get any of that. All I do is get support. And you mentioned it earlier, and you're right. I did everything I could when I decided that we were going to get married. When I decided I was going to move to Atlanta, and I asked her to marry me, she said yes. I said I'm going to do everything I can to make my career and make my living in the Southeast. And if I get a gig in New York or California, which I've done, or somewhere overseas, and I got to leave for a week or 3 days, that's okay. But what I didn't want to do was go out for 6 months and tour with some band. I said no to all that at an early age. I said, I'm just going to find a way to do it here, whether I got to teach 1 million students or have 7 nights a week gigs, whatever it takes. So that's kind of how that happened. And sure, there's nights where we miss each other. We don't get a lot of dates together. But that's just part of the deal.
You're also, speaking of education, you were at least working on something called a big band camp. And that's really neat. You want to talk about that?
Joe's Jazz Camp. Can't believe I named it that. Me and my good buddy Lee Watts, who plays bass trombone in my band, put that camp together, I guess 4 years ago. It's ridiculously cool. It's so hip. Lee has been a part of many camps around the country over the years, and kind of has put together his own model of what a jazz camp should be. And his model happens to be pretty much perfect. I mean, we're tweaking it a little bit, but it works, man. And we got together on this, and I said, well, why don't we gear it towards big band music too, since we have this big band, right? So we started it 4 years ago, and we get 100, 120, 130 students every year, and it's 1 week long. and they love it, man, and they love it. And it's so depressing we couldn't do it last year. And this coming June, I don't know. We're still just trying to decide if we should maybe just do a shorter version of it. But it's a chance for young musicians from I guess ages 13 to about 17, 12 to about 17, to get together and spend a week with a lot of the great players in my band. And they spend all week with them getting private lessons, getting music theory, jazz theory, playing in combos, playing in big band, listening to lectures, listening to jazz history classes. And then it all culminates with a big concert.
Hmm.
And really, really fun. Man, we had like 6 big bands last year, or the year before, I guess 19. Yeah, it's been a thrill in my life to do that camp. And we'll get that going again. And our goal, hopefully, is to do that camp, that same model, not only in Atlanta, but other cities around the country too, where Lee and I could just kind of go visit and help set it up. And then they'll have their people that run it there too. Or maybe like Jazz at Lincoln Center does this, right? They'll do a camp somewhere on the other side of the country, but they'll send 2 or 3 people from New York from there, so maybe we can send some of our teachers. So I mean, that's kind of the long goal, but the real goal was to get these kids educated in this music and to get to play it. And they light up, man. They just love it.
It sounds like it. Where were you when I was a kid? Jeez. So
What? Oh, go ahead.
the camp, obviously you're dedicated towards teaching these kids history, because if you want to play jazz, you really got to know your history. But jazz is hopefully also moving into the future. A lot of people have proclaimed the death of jazz many times, and it hasn't happened. Are you thinking about the future of the music, and what's your vision for it?
Well, I mentioned earlier that I'm not the guy that's trying to change the sound of jazz and do something necessarily new with it. There are plenty of people who do that. Russell Gunn, a good friend of all of ours, is a local guy who composes and writes and is always trying to push the envelope and move things forward. But as far as your most recent question, yeah, I'm always looking to the future. I mean, mostly because jazz, especially for these young kids, you just learn so much from it. It's just so much more than just music. The way they light up, the way their new friendships form, the way their self-confidence comes together as they perform and as they get better throughout the week. It's kind of an art form that just transcends just playing over a bird tune or playing over the blues. I mean, it's just so much bigger than that. So the future of the music, I think, is super strong. Probably mostly because of Winton and Jazz at Lincoln Center and all the people that they touch, but maybe myself and Lee Watts and our camp and the local Atlanta jazz scene, maybe we can do our part to inspire some folks as well.
What do you think what's special about jazz for you? What are these? I mean, you think about jazz holistically. You think about it from a money standpoint, but not in a mercantile way, but in a, way to make a living way. And you think about decorum as far as how you treat people in these sessions. This is all part of who you are and what you bring to the music. What do you feel like you can teach these kids beyond how to play this diz lick?
Some of the things you just mentioned, which we do talk about that a lot. I mean, just the self-respect that it takes to be a good jazz musician. As you become a working jazz musician, showing up on time, having the respect to wear the outfit that you're supposed to wear on the gig. If you're supposed to wear a coat and tie, wear a coat and tie, right? The
And
biggest
that's more than just about getting the gig. That's about a certain level of respect for the music and for yourself as well.
yeah, and a professionalism has to come along with it. When somebody emails you about a gig, get back to them within a timely fashion. It's always funny to me that like I'll be around guys and they'll be the whole time I'm talking to them, we'll be wherever we are, they're on their phone texting, right? All day long they're texting and you're trying to talk to them and hang on, they do another text. And then you text them 2 days later about a gig, you don't hear from them for 2 days. Like, I'm with you, all you do is text. How come when I text you, oh, sorry, I missed that one, but those are the most important texts to return, right? So I mean, there's so much to teach the young folks about this music. But what really turned me on to it was hearing it done right. Like when I heard Chet Baker for the first time, I was sold, right? When I heard Miles for the first time I was sold. And I know that jazz education works because in eighth, when I was in sixth grade, excuse me, we had a guy named Al Vizzuti, who's a wonderful trumpet player, come to our school, and he was the guest artist with our wind ensemble, our middle school wind ensemble. And I was so mad about this concert because it meant that I had to miss a hockey game, and I was a hockey player. And my parents said, "Well, you committed to this concert, and they're expecting you, and you're the first trumpet player. You've got to be there." So we went to rehearsal that afternoon, and my mother was with me, and Alan Bazzuti came in, and he played the trumpet through our rehearsal. And when I heard him play, I remember I almost had a tear in my eye. And I said to my mom, "That's what I'm doing the rest of my life." Instantly, I said that. I knew it. It was like something clicked in my head, and I had never heard the horn played like that before. And I knew right away. And if he hadn't been hired by our band director to come and visit us, who knows where I'd be right now? I mean, I don't know what path I would have taken. I mean, I enjoyed music, but that proved to me right then and there that jazz education works and music education works. And when you have a chance to be around somebody that's actually out there doing it, like locally, we do our jazz camp. We're all out there doing it, right? We're on the scene, whatever scene it is, and we're performing. These kids really look up to us, and we've inspired lots of kids through this camp.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about how you're inspiring folks. I want to give you a chance to talk about your newest album. It's not so new anymore, 2018, but still, it's the most recent. It's called Go Getta, and I really enjoyed it. And I want to thank you in particular for the Jimmy Webb tunes, especially Wichita Lineman, which is one of my favorite songs in the world, and an unusual choice for a big band album. So, you want to talk about your album a little bit?
Yeah, that was a fun project to come up with. That was all part of a Kickstarter campaign that we did. We were trying to get in the studio and do two recordings and raise enough money to do that at John Driscoll Hopkins' new recording studio in Marietta. And so we were fortunate enough to raise enough money to do two recordings. We did them in 5 days, I think. A Christmas record called The Christmas Song, and then the Go Getter Project. And the Go Getter Project was especially fun for me because I got to include strings. I don't know if you noticed, but there's
I did, yeah.
strings on there that are beautiful. And Jeff Jarvis, who was my teacher growing up, wrote some of the arrangements. Wes Funderburk wrote most of the arrangements.
Kenny G's on the album.
Kenny G, who's a good friend of mine, is I called him up and I said, "Look, I got this kind of poppy tune that somebody wrote for me. Kipper Jones, the great Kipper Jones, wrote this for me. And would you play a solo on it?" And he said, "Send it to me." And I sent it to him, and he sent back this killing tenor saxophone solo, right? I said, "Can I use that?" And he said, "Yeah, man." So, and the Glenn Campbell music came about, I guess it was about 2008. I got to play in this really cool golf tournament called the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. And I was put in that tournament by Clint Eastwood. Clint had hired me to play some parties. And I went out there, and you have to perform. If Clint puts you in the tournament, you have to perform at the volunteers party that night, like the Wednesday night. So I had to perform 10 minutes, and every 10 minutes, a different entertainer that Clint had hired has to perform. So I was on stage with George Lopez and Kenny G and Glenn Campbell and I think Justin Timberlake, and the list went on and on and on. And I was part of this group. It just blew my mind. Kevin Costner he was singing, and all these guys were cool. Kenny G was the best, but the one guy that really knocked me out was Glenn Campbell. He came right over to me and he said, "I hear what you're doing, and you sound great, young man." And we spoke. I met his wife. We had a drink, all of us, and he was the one guy that I walked away from that thing going, "Oh my God, man, that is cool." And then he got sick shortly after that.
Yeah.
So he just made a real impact on me. So every time we do a show, I like to include a couple of his songs, and those two are probably my favorite. By the time I get to Phoenix and Wichita Lineman by Jimmy Webb. And so I said, "Man, let's put these on there. We can make them sound good with the big band." And I think they came off great. I think Wes wrote great. And
Yeah.
it's kind of part of our little signature show that we do. We add those songs in there.
They don't sound like, hey, let's do a big band version of this. They just sound like songs that are done well, and they have the big band on them. It's a really nice line you walked on those tunes.
Thank you, man. Yeah. I love that record, man. It was so much fun to make.
Well,
My goal is to make a record like that, but all analog tape, and set it up just like the old guys did, like the old guys and gals, like with the singer and the musicians right there, and the whole orchestra's around you. and the conductors there. I know that's a big project, but that's probably my next Kickstarter is going to be to kind of put something like that together and do a nostalgic record like that.
Well, how can people find you and contribute to that Kickstarter project?
Well, we have to get that all together. We don't have the Kickstarter yet. We're just in the early stages of figuring out how to pitch it correctly so people really get the idea what we're trying to do. I think, and there's a lot of controversy around this, but I think that analog recordings have a certain sound to them that is far superior to digital recordings. And I know you can get into that all day long, and some people disagree and some people agree. But to my ears, I love that. So I have a couple records that I've done analog. One of them is called Plays and Sings. It's all analog tape, but I want to do a big band record like that. And I think if we approach it, like I mentioned a minute ago, where we record it like they did back in the day, where there's no overdubs, there's no punching in, and there's no, you just do, if you have to do 6 takes of a song, you do 6 takes. But eventually you're going to get a nice take, and there's going to be a few mistakes. And you're not going to auto-tune your voice, and you're either qualified to perform this music or you're not, right? And I think that would be appealing to our fan base. And once COVID is over and they can come to the studio, they can donate to the Kickstarter and come to the studio and watch this project happen. I think it would be really fun and super challenging, but why not, right?
Well, how can people follow you to stay posted on the progress of this thing?
Well, it'll come out, we'll have it together soon, but I'm on Facebook, under my name. I'm in Instagram, and I always post everything to those 2 places, and I'm on Twitter, but my website would have the most updates, joegransden.com.
And yeah, that's Gransden.
Gransden.
Thank you for correcting me. Gransden. Yeah.
That's cool.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for what you do and have done for our community, for what you do for the music, and for your attitude. It's been very inspiring to me throughout all these years, and I'm so happy we've had a chance to share you with our audience.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you. And I'm looking at you, man. You got a tie on. You look so sharp. And I look like I just rolled out of bed, man. But so you're always very classy, and you're the man.
Appreciate it.
I apologize, folks at home. I should have shaved or something, but I just woke up.
If they want to see you dressed up, they can come to one of your gigs.
That's right. Even better.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, man. Take care.
So, friends, if you are unable to find Joe and you need some help, get a hold of us at willowschoolga.com. You can find me there. truermu.com. You can find me there, and we'd be happy to connect you up. We're very happy you joined us. Please like these videos. Please let us know who else you'd like us to talk to. And we have some amazing guests coming up. Just stay tuned. Subscribe to our channel. Thanks very much, folks, and we'll see you next time.